Make your voice heard. Call in now at 952-946-6205. This is the Daily Report with Ian Levitt.
Back with you on a Monday afternoon here on AM 950. Coming up, we're going to be talking with Caitlin Burgess from the Twin Cities Daily Planet. She's going to be our new guest from the Twin Cities Daily Planet. We'll get up to date on what's going on here in the state. Also, there was a big march last week, or a big rally, I should say, on the issue of redlining here in Minneapolis, which appears to be a very severe problem. $20 billion of equity lost in this state just in the last several years. We're going to talk with Michael Dietrich about that from Minnesota 2020. And right now, joining us on the line, a nationally syndicated radio host, also does a TV show as well, and a name I know a lot of you are familiar with, David Pakman of The David Pakman Show. David, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I'm guessing it's been a pretty busy one for you so far, huh?
Yeah, it's been pretty hectic.
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, I know, as you said on your show, that this is, you didn't even make this connection originally of this man who's in charge of or allegedly has killed 3 people now in Kansas and shot at another 2, who's currently in custody. And you had him on your program about 4 years ago now. Talk about the circumstances even leading up to this guy coming on your show.
Yeah, at the time, he was running a crazy, racist, anti-Jewish campaign ad in Missouri. He was running for Senate there. And I think I might have originally heard the ad, maybe like on the Howard Stern show, and we got in touch with the guy. He agreed to do an interview, and that ad and his campaign were kind of the premise of him being on.
And we played that ad a little bit here in the show, and I mean, I don't even want to play it again. It's such a hateful ad that obviously, I mean, and you kind of cajoled with him a little bit that, did he actually think he had has a chance of winning, because at the time he was still running. And I mean, just something like this, I know you're not broadcasting out of Kansas, but do you know how that all turned out? There's no way this guy even got 1% of the vote, did he?
No, I think he got, I don't remember if it was 7 or 70 or 0.7% of the vote or something like that. I'm pretty sure there was 7 involved, but it was very low. He never had a shot.
Right. Yet, obviously, something like this continues to be out there. So, when you walk back to the audio, and I listened to your whole interview today, we grabbed a couple of clips off of that as well. This guy seemed kind of like an amiable guy. Obviously a very, racist. The words that were coming out of his mouth were very, very harsh, but he didn't come across as the kind of crazy lunatic that people think when they think of people that go on these shooting sprees. Did you take the same away?
No, I didn't at all. Here I disagree with you. I interview all sorts of extremists, right? And extremists who are anti-gay, they're religious extremists, they hate anybody who's not white, or they hate Jews. And a lot of them are genuinely nice people who don't hate me or the interviewer. They just want to help them. That's at least what they say. But Miller actually told me that even though he's never met me, even though I've never done anything to him, that he did hate me personally just because I'm Jewish. So he actually stood out as one of the guys that didn't seem like a particularly nice guy, at least not in the interview I did with him.
So then, as your show progresses, I mean, you have a lengthy conversation with him. What about what he said triggered in your mind that here's someone that is literally a dangerous human being?
Well, here's the thing. You get, sitting behind a microphone or in front of a TV screen, you sometimes get a little bit desensitized to extremism, right? And I kind of generally always think that all of these individuals, no matter what their flavor of extremism is, are pretty close to going over the edge and turning rhetoric into real-world violence. So there was actually nothing in particular about Miller that made him stand out from the other people I've interviewed, aside from the fact that he seemed to personally dislike me. So in thinking back to it, I wasn't surprised overall, because I think all of these guys are pretty close to the edge. But there was nothing specific about him that made me think he was more on the edge.
You mentioned that this, again, we're speaking with David Pakman of The David Pakman Show here on the Daily Report. David, you mentioned when you were talking that you had emails back and forth with him, even since then, even up to, I think you said November of last year. What was in those emails at that time? Because you hadn't had him on since 2010, right?
Right, yeah. So I don't know if you remember this white separatist, Craig Cobb. Craig Cobb is this guy who made some headlines in October, November, because I don't remember if it was North or South Dakota, but he wanted to create like a whites-only community. And he was actually friends with Miller, and Miller served as the connection who put me in touch with Craig Cobb, and we were able to set up the interview. After the interview with Cobb, I don't know if you remember this part, Cobb went on some radio show or TV show in the UK, and they did a DNA test, and it turned out that he had black ancestors, which
That's
of course
right.
he denied. It would go completely against his no Jews, no blacks, no Hispanics type of mentality. And I wanted to have him back on to talk about that, so I contacted Miller himself, and Miller seemed more interested in telling me how I was afraid to have him back on and how that really is what I should be doing. At the time, Cobb was in jail anyway, so it didn't make much of a difference in the end.
Very interesting. David, but these emails back and forth, this was regarding that appearance that he had with him, or I'm sorry, the email, how were the emails connected to this?
Well, let's see. I was emailing with Glenn Miller, and that was in November of 2013. And like I said, the reason we were in touch was because he was putting me in touch with his friend Craig Cobb.
Okay.
So that's how we got back in touch. But like I said, Miller seemed very desperate for attention, just saying I was too chicken to have him back on my program, saying that the Jews were controlling me and weren't letting me have him back on, stuff like that. And I've made these emails public. They're on my website, davidpakman.com.
That is just amazing, David. And you said that you have a lot of people kind of like this on your show, bigots, racists. What drives you to do that? What drives you to bring these people on the show? Just the general exposure of this sort of a mentality?
Yeah, I mean, we have a broad variety of guests on the show. More than 9 out of 10 are not extremists, but, over a 6-7 year period, you come across your share of those who are extreme. And I think it's good to know that these people are around, right? I mean, the Glenn Miller story serves to remind us that there is still a thing as anti-Semitism in the U.S. A lot of times people may forget that, and clearly it's still around. And I think that it's important to remember that. Same thing with the Westboro Baptist Church. There are these extreme elements.
As you've talked to a lot of these people, David, have you seen a common thread? I mean, you mentioned that for this guy, it was all about the attention. Is that usually what the motivation seems to be, or is there something else we can glean from this?
No, I think there are several iterations of this. I mean, for some, it's very religiously based, right? So there are lots of groups that have their literal interpretation or not literal, as the case may be, of some sacred text, so-called sacred text, and they believe that tells them that they should be doing something or other. For some...
David, are you with us?
Gay people. For, more that black people were as good as them. So we see this happen with religion quite a bit.
Sorry, David, we just missed a little bit of that, but I think I got the gist of it. Is you're saying these are true believers who are, who have interpreted some sort of a spiritual text to say this is the definitive answer, and I'm going to read it as this, as though it's saying someone else is above me. Is that the phone just cut out a little bit? Is that what you were saying, David?
For some people, that's it. For some, it's just mental illness. For some, it's family upbringing. I mean, I think there are a lot of different circumstances.
So, obviously, you're in the talk show business. A lot of us are trying to think, well, what is it that can be taken out of this? What sort of lessons can be learned from this? Is there anything, again, as you've talked to all of these people, has there been any level of gleaning what, beyond the common thread, what it is that can be done to sort of curb this? Or is this just something that happens?
I wish I had an answer. In a country of 340 or however many million people there are at this point, I think no matter what you do, there is going to be extremism. The best thing that can be done is, number one, not to pretend it doesn't exist, and number two, to have systems in place to try to identify or mitigate the amount of damage that extremists can do. And, I'm speaking in a completely utopian sense because I don't know how you do that.
Right. Well, I don't either. And that's when, this story broke, and I'm sure you were watching Twitter as well. I mean, it was exploding. Everyone's all of a sudden an expert on these issues. And I just sat back, and it's like, we've talked about the gun issue, and I'm not saying that isn't important. I think it's very important to talk about in this. But it does, you're left with this feeling of hopelessness. Like, these people just continue to exist. And we just have to do the best we can around it. I mean, is there anything further to glean from it than that?
Well, I think we do have one optimistic thing, which is a lot of these retrograde ideas seem to age out, right? If we look at, for example, gay marriage, increasingly, especially with younger people just believe that if you're in a same-sex couple, you should be able to get married. Even 60% of Republicans under 30 believe that now. At one point, a lot of people in this country thought slavery should be legal. It's pretty tough now. I mean, it still exists. It's pretty tough to find people now who still would argue slavery should be legal. So what we can look forward to is the aging out of these retrograde points of view.
So do you see those demographics play out when you have these people on, that it seems the people that are on this side are almost always of the older generation, or are there up-and-comers that are a big part of this too?
I've interviewed some young extremists, but you're right. I mean, it does tend to be, it is just completely anecdotal, so we can't take anything general from it, but at least on my program, it is definitely older people that hold most of these views.
Very interesting. Again, we've been speaking with David Pakman. You can find his show online at davidpakman.com, Pakman, davidpakman.com, and I really appreciate all the time today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right, and we're going to be right back with your calls as well at 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205 here on the Daily Report.